Welcome. My name is Kelly.
I'm Laura.
I'm Kate.
And this is Fanimated, an animation fan podcast where we get a chance to geek out about our favorite animated media. And today, Kate and Laura are here to discuss Anastasia, the 1997 Yay! Fox Animation Studios film. I want to thank the patrons at patreon.com/fanimated for voting on this topic. This past month, they had a whole bunch of Don Bluth movies to choose from, and Anastasia came out the dominant winner. So very excited to talk about Anastasia today. And if you guys want to vote on upcoming episode topics, just go to patreon.com/fanimated. Being eligible to vote is the lowest tier because I want as many people as possible to be able to vote because it's a lot of fun. But I'm very, very excited to be talking about Anastasia and to talk about our first Don Bluth film on the podcast. I was, going through a list of like studios and things that we have yet to discuss. And of course, Don Bluth came to mind, a name you should know if you are into animation, especially Western animation. And his films like Land Before Time, An American Tail, The Secret of NIMH, all of those great films are just a staple of Western animation, and Anastasia is no different. So to start out, we were all 90s kids in the time of Anastasia. So what is your history with this film? What do you remember of it as a child?
Let me just say that revisiting many of his films, including Anastasia, as an adult makes me realize that he is like single-handedly responsible for making skeptical and wounded children out of us 90s millennials. Because these are some dark movies that really, like, I would not show my children at the age that I watched them at. I saw Anastasia in the theater. It's one of my favorite things about talking about this era of films with you guys is that I got to see all of these in the theater, and I have that very, very strong sensory memory of going to see it. It was like, this is how much I remember because I was traumatized by this movie. It was dark. It was winter. My dad and my brother were ice fishing, and my mom took us to the Hopkins Theater in downtown Hopkins after dinner to see Anastasia. And that was a big deal because we didn't usually leave the house after dinner at night, right? In the winter. I was normally like, we're going to get ready for bed. And we went and saw a movie. So that was very exciting. And it was snowy and cold. And we went and saw Anastasia. And I thought she was so pretty, but I just don't remember ever being that scared in a theater before, because I thought Rasputin was the scariest thing I had ever seen. And just to be so overwhelmed by him. And I think overwhelmed by the maybe not so well meshed styles of animation that they used to bring the world of Anastasia to life. It was just, yeah, obviously I loved the film. I had tons of stuff. Like, I had all the toys. I loved it, but I remember being really, really scared. Like, that's my first memory of Anastasia, was like, she was so pretty. I'm really scared.
It is definitely a scary film. I don't blame you for that.
I was a little too young, I think, when it came out. I was maybe only like 5 when it came out. But it was something that I remember we had rented back when, you went to Blockbuster and rented a movie, for any youngins who are listening. And so we rented it, and I remember like seeing it a few times as a kid, but same thing. Like, especially the dream sequence was just really scary. And Rasputin was pretty scary. It wasn't something that was on super rotation for me as a kid. It really wasn't until I think I rewatched it when I was in college, maybe, or high school, that I was like, oh, I love this. I love this movie.
Because you know what the hook of this movie is? It's the music. And the
Yeah.
music is what hooks you as an adult. It's like, it's a story, it's a fabricated story. It kind of came out in the, not, you know, it's, we know what the story of Anastasia, but it's like a cobbled together little love story. And it's nice. And it came out in the middle of all the Disney princess extravaganza, right? And it's another pretty princess. And then you rewatch it when you're just a little older, even like in high school for me. And it was like, wait, like, are they just like dropping bangers right now? Just like one after the other, like every single song. It's so, the songs are so good and just the score is so good that I think that that's what pulls adults back into it, as because the story isn't super unique and the animation is not like groundbreaking,
especially nowadays.
But oh my gosh, that music is just,
yeah,
that's like the gem of this.
That is Flaherty and Aaron's at the top of their game. 1990, my musical nerd is showing right now, 1990 to 1999, they were at the top of their game, and everything that they've written after kind of is a little downhill from that. I'm looking at you, Seussical.
I was gonna say, what are some of your other favorites of theirs, for those who maybe don't know their music?
Well, Kelly, I know what your favorite is. Is the best musical ever, Ragtime.
Yeah.
If you're a musical fan and you don't know Ragtime or haven't listened to it, please go check it out. It is so beautiful and so relevant. Regardless, that I would say that and Anastasia are my favorite things that they have written. They're a songwriting duo, if you haven't deducted that from now.
Yes, I completely agree. And I just would like to echo that I cannot believe that the people who wrote Ragtime also wrote Seussical.
Right. If you know anything about musicals, Anastasia, Ragtime, Seussical, and Once on This Island are four incredibly different. Those are like their major, they've like written other things too. Those are kind of their four major tent poles, and they're all so different. It's kind of unbelievable that they came from the same songwriting duo.
And that's like saying like the same person that, you know, it's like saying Lin-Manuel Miranda also wrote for VeggieTales or something, which isn't true, but like it's like that same comparison.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Ragtime to Seussical.
You're like, what
happened here?
It's great though.
Yeah, Ragtime, side note, just because like this isn't a musical theater podcast, but I could.
I wish it was.
Wait a minute. Wait.
Second side podcast about musicals.
Yes.
No. I love Ragtime. It is my favorite musical of all the time, and it's beautiful, and please go listen to it. Clearly, these guys know what they're doing, and the music is phenomenal. I would agree that that is like one of the biggest hooks for me as an adult, but also like as a child. Like all of those songs, that music, like just it sits different because of all the nostalgia connected to it.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, Anastasia was never a film that we had at home growing up, but it made it all the more special when I had a friend who had it or was able to see it somewhere else. Like it was like, oh, we get to watch Anastasia. Yes. And I remember I had a little toy doll. Like, I don't remember where I got it. It was like small though. It wasn't like, who knows, maybe it was a McDonald's toy or something, you know, like, and it was of Anastasia in her, like going to the Russian ballet dress, like the long blue one. And I was like, this is my little Anastasia. And so that's like, for me, that's her iconic dress, even though I know she has like the even prettier big ball gown at the end. I'm like, but she wears the pretty, you know, blue dress to the Russian ballet. Anyway, so those are my connections with it. I always, you know, loved it. Again, it's like, even though it's not a Disney princess, like it feels like a Disney princess film. And it hits a lot of the same marks, I think, that like the Disney Renaissance films, you know, made, and it like follows a lot of the same like structure as a Disney Renaissance film.
I kind of mentioned that when we were watching through it. I was like, I think that's probably why Anastasia was such a success, especially compared to some of his other works, whether it was with Fox or whether it was on his own kind of independent company, that it does, like, between the music and structurally, like, the plot just is so similar to how so many of, like, Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, like, kind of how it all flows and the structure of it. I think that's why it's so successful compared to the others.
Yes, I agree. That's exactly what I was going to say. Just that, like, it's clear that Don Bluth at the time in the 80s and 90s was like a rival to the Disney films coming out, because he could, create these experiences. And again, definitely a little more on the edge compared to Disney, like definitely creating a lot of very like questionable content for children, but clearly had the, he definitely has his own style and taste, but is also, was able to create an amazing film like this one that's just as successful as the Disney films of the time.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that most people our age who saw Anastasia or liked it when they were little have no idea that it's not a Disney film. Unless you're like a big animation fan, most people don't know that it's not a Disney princess movie.
And going into like Don Bluth a little bit here, like, because I just laugh because like technically Disney owns it now.
Yeah.
So
like, we watched it on Disney Plus.
Yeah. Because technically Anastasia is a Disney princess now. But I just going into some of Don Bluth's story, like I love these type of stories because Don Bluth worked for Disney. Like one of his first credits was Sleeping Beauty. And he had this idea for Secret of NIMH. Have you guys seen The Secret of NIMH?
It is so scary. That's all I remember. I only saw it once when I was a kid and I was terrified.
It is not for children.
No. I read the books when I was little. I actually think like slightly older kids read them. I read them in third or fourth grade. And I just like I just ate up the entire NIMH series. I loved it. And then my mom was like, oh, remember the movie? And I was really little when it came out. And I'm like, I don't remember. And she showed it to me as like a middle schooler. And I was still like, oh, I'm scared. Like, what is this?
I watch it as an adult and I'm terrified. Like, it's creepy. It will give you nightmares. But like, he had this idea for The Secret of NIMH and he goes to, Disney with it. And of course, Disney is Disney and doesn't want to take risks. And so they're like, no, thanks. And so he's like, fine, I'm just going to make my own studio. Very John Lasseter Pixar move right there, right? And then, of course, just like with Pixar, Disney ends up buying it anyway. So
proof of concept. It's an age-old business strategy. When you know someone will go do something on your own and then you can buy a good product, it's called proof of concept. That's not just Disney, that's every smart businessman in the entire world, because no matter how successful they are, they're never going to be able to rival what you can offer them. So you go let them waste their time proving the concept and then you buy the cash cow. It's a business concept.
Business 101, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for standing up for Disney, because you know how I can be a harsh on them sometimes.
Well, they do own the world, so
it's not just Disney. Like I said, it's just it's a business concept called proof of concept.
Yeah,
Disney's not the only one that does it. Like everyone does it. So
yeah, and so Don Bluth was able to go off and do his own thing, and some of it was successful, some of it was not. We'll talk about that later. So anyway, it's not surprising that like people think it's a Disney film, because also it's a musical, right? And that's what we expect out of Disney princess films. It's the music.
I also have to say, while we're on this, like people think it's a Disney film topic, when Kate and I rewatched it, I was like, to be fair, a lot of the animation looks exactly like characters from Disney movies. Like Rasputin is Jafar. He's Jafar. Yeah. So he is like scary old Jafar. It's like the same character. Even I can't, I forget the character's name. What's the main guy's name?
Dimitri?
Dimitri. You know why I can't remember his name? Because he looks exactly like Thomas from Pocahontas.
Yeah.
He is Thomas from Pocahontas, right down to his awful haircut.
His 90s haircut.
So many of the characters have such similar animation styles to characters from Disney movies that were coming out around that same time period that it feels like it fit. And when it came out, it feels like it fits into the animation progression that Disney had. Whether they stole that from him or he stole it from them, I don't know, but it can't be a coincidence that everyone looks the dang same.
I have to say that Dimitri looks like every other Don Bluth main male character that exists. Like, have you seen Prince Cornelius? Have you seen the guy from Titan AE? Yeah. They are literally all the same character. The same character design. Absolutely the same. So if anything, Don Bluth just like can only draw one male character.
I also did say when we were watching, when they're on the ship where he's like trying to save Anastasia, I was like, you know who he looks like? He looks like Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic. And then I remembered that Titanic came out the year after. Or did it come out the same year? Maybe it was the same year. Anyways, someone stole the look from someone else.
Oh, it's so great.
But yeah, Rasputin is Jafar in disguise.
Yeah. Even gets the funny comedic flying sidekick.
Yep.
And Bartok.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Bartok.
Love Bartok.
Gold. He, as a child, Bartok saves Rasputin because Rasputin is so scary. He's so scary. Everything he does is so scary. His minions are so scary. I was terrified as a child. But somehow Bartok and his little like, oh, good try, sir. Like he just makes it so that it's like, oh, don't be too scared. Here's the bat.
Yes, he is absolutely the comedic relief. A great comedic relief, by the way. And like that Rasputin clearly needs. Like we talked about how like Don Bluth films can be scary, and this one especially. Like Rasputin, I remember like I mean he's basically as the song states, a corpse falling to bits. Like
yes,
he's falling apart and he's terrifying, and his scenes are like legit. Like he wants to kill Anastasia. It's scary.
He's trying to kill her. He sends those super scary things after her, and he's voiced phenomenally by just like the voice acting by Christopher Lloyd is just unbelievable and so scary and so good that he's just like the whole, I mean, right down to the first scene where he falls into the ice and he's like trying to kill Anastasia.
Yes.
And it's just like he's just evil. Like he's just there's so many villains have a redeeming quality, and he's just fully evil. Unapologetically terrifyingly evil. And it's I'm scared of him, except I like his bugs.
The bugs are my favorite part of that song. That is the best song in the whole movie.
We'll definitely talk about music, but we have gone 20 minutes into this recording without giving a synopsis. So we are just so excited about Anastasia that we just bulldoze right past it. But obviously, spoiler alert, if you've made it this far, sorry, if we spoiled anything for you. But Anastasia is the story of the fall of the Romanovs, as the fall of Imperial Russia, in extremely loosely based off of historical events, in which the Romanov family is murdered, and there, at the time was like an actual rumor, an actual like belief that Anastasia could be alive. And we'll talk about like history later on, but in this version of the story, Anastasia, is a princess of Russia, and um, she has a very close relationship with her grandmama and gives her this little music box. And then, when everything crap hits the fan and everyone's running for their lives, Anastasia gets lost in the kerfuffle and loses her memory at 8 years old. She's raised in an orphanage. She decides to, all she has left is this necklace that her grandma gave her and says, like, we'll be together in Paris. So she's like, okay, I'm going to go, find my family. That's her ultimate motivation. I'm going to go find my family. And so she runs into two con men, Vlad and Dmitri, who are wanting to find someone to pretend to be Anastasia to bring to the Grand Duchess, who is giving a reward for anyone who can find Anastasia. If she really is alive, she wants to have her back in her life. And, and so they find Anastasia and they're like, oh, we're going to pretend to have her be the princess, etc. Unbeknownst to them, she is the princess. And of course, in the midst of all this, in her journey to, Paris turning her into a princess, Rasputin has literally sold his soul to have the power to kill all the Romanovs. And since she is not dead, he cannot pass on. And so he's like sending minions and things after her. It is scary. And then of course, ultimately, it's really just a story about Dmitri and Anastasia falling in love. And it's great and perfect. And Laura just rolled her eyes. What do you think the story is about, Laura?
I think that what they wanted to say, and they didn't do it, what they were trying to say is that you make your own family. Like, that's the story, that you make your own family, right?
Yes.
But it's just like really unfeministly executed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's cute and I like him and I'm going to leave everything behind and kiss on a boat. The end.
Well, I mean, she has to leave at the end in order to retain the fact that nobody knew. Well, historically, I think we know that she did die with her family, but they had to create that excuse of, we don't know if she was alive or not. Maybe she ran off with this guy.
I just hated that in order to do that, she had to abandon her grandma. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
Poor
feel
grandma.
like they loved each other so much, and then she found her, and then it could kind of be like, did you really have to just go be a poor person on a boat now? That sounded awful, but you know what I mean? Oh, maybe we can keep it a secret, but I just hated the you have to choose. To me, that was just not she shouldn't have had to choose anything. I just thought it was a stupid ending.
It is kind of a dumb ending. Kelly.
Guys, when I rewatched it just this week, I rewatched the last 5 minutes 4 times.
Because you love it?
Because I love it so much.
Kelly, no!
Oh my goodness.
It literally, guys, I had to rewatch the bit where Grand Duchess is no, it's a beautiful beginning. And then they're on the boat.
Stop!
Dmitri and Anastasia finally kiss.
Oh my
and
God.
They're together forever.
I love you, Kelly.
Are
they together forever?
Thing?
It makes my heart so happy. And I love the end of this film.
I'm glad for you, Kelly.
I love that.
Also, what I've noticed this time, since we're talking about the end, when she's in the dilemma of do I choose him or do I go with my grandmama? And the Grand Duchess is you have to decide, and then she leaves and Anastasia is but can't you, can't you help me? She's turning back to her to be I need help. And that just resonated with me in the fact of especially big decisions like that. It's I have a really hard time. I want someone to tell me what's right and what's wrong, what I should be doing. And Anastasia wants her grandma to tell her what to do, like, because she doesn't really know, and she's like unsure, and like it's just a lot of stuff. And so I was just like, I relate, Anastasia. And so I just liked that moment when she like turns back and is like, wait, but can't you just tell me what's right? Like, you know, and it's like, no, you have to, you guys, you have to make the tough calls for yourself. You have to choose for yourself. You have to choose, you know, your destiny. And this is the first time she does, right? Because even at the beginning, even with St. Petersburg, like she's got this job at the fish market or whatever, or she can go to St. Petersburg and try to find her family. She's like, God, like, send me a sign. And then Puka shows up and gives her a sign. She doesn't make her own choices like until this moment, and she makes the choice, and she's with Dmitri, and it's perfect and precious. The end.
It's hard to live happily ever after when you're starving to death, but you know, whatever.
It's true. I agree with both of you.
Enjoy that boat kiss, because that's the last time either of you are going to have had a bath in about 5 years. And when you're living in the slums of Paris because the love of your life's job experience is being a poor con man in communist Russia, and you have 8,000 children and you're living in a slum dumping feces out the window, I hope your love was worth it.
Oh my gosh. That's beautifully executed, Laura.
Gonna stay with grandmama. Me and her are gonna go
in her palace.
Eat some macaroons.
Do you not think that the Grand Duchess would, you know, provide some assistance to their livelihood?
They just left. Do you really? Oh, sorry, we're poor now. Can we have some money? She just left. They left. That's the part that was stupid, is that it's like, you could have been like, Grandmama, I love him. We're going to go live in this little cottage and we'll visit you every Tuesday and it's going to be real nice. Like, I just didn't, I hate true love conquers all. I hate it. It does not conquer all. True love can help you get past a lot of stuff, but it does not conquer poverty. It does not conquer sickness. It does not conquer a lot of important things that girls growing up today need to understand. It will not fix. It's not going to fix it.
Are we going to open this door right now? Because I'm sorry, but
I'm plotting.
I love true love stories. Listen.
Well, when she marries a prince and they're going to have a bunch of money and live in a castle, I mean, at least they have a plan. What was this? Let's go be poor on a boat? Like, you need a plan. You got to have a plan.
Okay, but like, I love stories that are like, you know, and okay. Basically, love conquers all is a phenomenal like storytelling technique, and I know it's cheesy and I love it, but technically love didn't necessarily win the day. It's just that's what she chose in the end, was to be with Dmitri. What you know, for your feminist standpoint, Anastasia did not beat Rasputin with love. She beat him with like intelligence and strength and courage, you know. And Dmitri didn't even really help that much. Let's be real.
He was kind of useless in the fight.
Okay, but that's the part to me that like that's why I don't like the decision at the end. I feel like she makes such interesting choices like along the way, and I don't think that I think she should have ended up with Dmitri. It's the way that they like, as long as we're together, we'll be okay. Oops, we've got the plague and we're dead because we live in a slum now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I love that I love the theme that like you choose your own family. Mm-hmm. Like, family isn't defined by finding someone. It's defined by like choosing to surround yourself by people that you love. I love that. That's why I think that it was so poorly executed, is that I'm just like, it at the end, the way that it was like, and then they're together, it just makes it feel like she threw everything away for a boy after her whole journey of like being a badass. That's personally how I feel. I think, and Kelly, I am going to say this. You're the one who's always talking about like, we needed more content. We needed to know more about these people. And I'm like, I needed to know more about what the plan was because I'm really, really concerned about the plan.
I feel like it was a very 90s form of feminism. I feel like there was a lot of movies in the 90s in particular where culturally we were kind of going towards like, yeah, girl power, like girls can do it all. But it lacks the portion of the sacrifice that you maybe need to make in making your decisions. Because I feel like Anastasia along her journey, you know, she's someone who she is equal to Dimitri, right? Like they have their kind of push and pull and back and forth with one another, but they stand on a very like equal playing field with one another, which I think is why like you root for their relationship and you like their relationship. But in the end, it's like, yeah, she's empowered and she's a feminist, but then she chooses the man, which might not be the correct choice. Kelly, what are you gonna say?
Don't necessarily think there's a correct quote unquote choice. I think she could have chose either one and they would have been correct. She was choosing what was right, you know, what she felt was right for her. And I will say to Laura's point that she's throwing everything away for a guy. I would say that the opposite would be true. Like if like the same would be true if she had chosen the other way around. She would have been throwing away her relationship with Dimitri. We've been watching this entire film building up this relationship with Dimitri. That is what she gained throughout this journey. And then she would have been throwing it all away to be a princess. And it's like, you don't have to be a princess.
I completely agree. The problem for me was the choice between the two. And that's ultimately like, I just didn't understand where like absolutely running away, no communication with grandma, let's go away forever. I hated, and I just don't think, I think that it was silly. I didn't like it.
Okay. So Laura, what would be your ideal ending to Anastasia then?
In my head, what I envision is I almost wish like I think that if there had been one more scene after that ending, it could have saved it. I have this image of like Dimitri and Anastasia like on a cute little French farm and like grandmama is visiting, you know, that just like a scene at the end that shows that they like lived this little happy idyllic life together. I think that that's kind of like what I was missing. The ending didn't even have to be different. I just wanted a little bit more of a conclusion to that narrative. And I didn't like that she had to choose between the two of them. I just thought that seemed really silly, that like there was no clue that she could stay in her grandma's life. And then also I just hated that she had to choose. So that's what I would have done. I would have loved just kind of like a flash forward scene to like all of them together in like the pastoral French countryside.
I like that a lot. I really do. Cause I that's what I guess assume, that they would like come and visit her and like be a part of her life still, even though they're married and they go off and whatever. But like it would kind of downplay, I think, the end. Like having something kind of more, you know, they go off and elope and it's like this big triumphant ending at the end. It just kind of like fits better in the story, I think. But I guess for me, like when I watch it, I just assume that, you know, she gets, you know, her family with grandmama, and also she gets the family that she chooses. And it's just not something that they show, I guess.
You know what I feel? I feel like it's at the end of Finding Nemo when they all are floating in their bags in the harbor. Now what? I'm like, I choose you. True love conquers all. Now what?
Now what? And I would also say what I like about this is that, you know, it's that classic cheesy story of like, what you were searching for was right beside you all along. And Laura's making a sick face, but I think it's cute.
And I'm the one who married my dad's best friend's son that I've known since I was born. Okay. I am the what you needed has been right next to you your whole life narrative. I am that. And I'm still like, bleh.
Oh dear. Since we've had this lovely discussion about the ending, let's talk about the characters again. I know we were talking about Rasputin, but of our little gang of misfits, who is your favorite character?
Oh gosh, it's hard to choose a favorite. I like them all. I don't know. We were we were joking earlier that I'm like obligated to say that Vlad is my favorite character. Because when we were watching it, I love rewatching things because you don't pick up on stuff that's happening in the background unless you watch it multiple times and you're not watching the kind of central action. And the scene where they're it's more of like the montage. Is that, yeah? It felt wrong coming out of my mouth. Anyways,
yeah.
There's a montage when they're on their journey after they've jumped off the train because they were being attacked by the scary things. And so they're walking to Paris. And there's a scene where Dimitri and Anya / Anastasia are just in the middle of the road arguing. And Vlad has picked Puka up. Vlad has a flower crown in his hair. And they're talking about Sophie. They're introducing who you will meet later in the film, Sophie, the kind of cousin to the Duchess. And he's talking about her because she's his love interest. And he's swept away with his feelings, and he picks Puka up and starts dancing around with Puka in his arms. And Puka's on the ground and he's jumping up and down, and they're dancing in the background while Dimitri and Anya are having this massive argument. And I don't know that I had ever seen that part of the film before, or was like watching because I was so, focused on what was happening in the foreground. And I recorded a video of me just screaming, I am Vlad. I am the one in the background dancing with the small dog, because it is true, because Fergus is my Puka. Therefore, I am Vlad. So I guess that must make him my favorite character. I don't know. I love all the characters, though. Bartok is great, too.
Yes. You definitely have a lot of Vlad energy.
Yes.
I love that. What about you, Laura? Who's your favorite?
Puka. Hands down, Puka is the best character in this entire film. I mean, followed second by Bartok. But I have been obsessed with Puka since I first saw him. I think Fergus looks like Puka. For those of you who have seen, I think Kelly has posted a few pictures of Fergus on the feed before. He looks like Puka. I think that like my obsession with I will have a small, fluffy, adorable companion started with Puka. Also, Puka's like the only one with any sense in this movie. I realized I'm like, I think I'm Puka. Everyone's just like dancing about and singing and arguing, and Puka's like, guys, there's some evil things trying to get us. I'll fix everything. You just keep looking at each other, I guess. I don't know. Puka's like the only one with any sense. Puka's the best character in this whole film. The end.
It's true.
When he wears this little outfit at the end, we actually like named Fergus because of Puka's regalia. I don't know why, but like my husband decided that Fergus needed that outfit and that his full name is Sir Fergus, Duke of Wellington. And it was like because of Puka in his regalia, his little crown.
That's wonderful and amazing. And I love it. I mean, Puka deserves everything. What is Puka even in the ending sequence? Do we see where he is? Is he with them? Oh, yes, he is, so. Because he covers his eyes because they kiss. And then he's oh, gross. It's cute. Puka. Okay, I'm going to be real basic and just say Anastasia is my favorite character.
I mean, she's a great character.
And she is so much different than other Disney princesses of the time. Like, I feel like she's much more sassy than Mulan, right? She is, pretty strong and independent and, defiant, I guess, in relationship to like Ariel. But I think Anastasia has more like common sense than Ariel does. Um, and again, we're comparing her to Disney princesses, but because those are the animated princesses of Western animation at the time. And so she has a very strong personality, and her like her relationship with Vlad and Dimitri, like she just has such fun, good chemistry with both of those characters, and has really touching, beautiful moments with both of them. Like, and as a trio, they just like hold together really well. And I think Anastasia's character is a huge part of that.
I feel like if you're going to compare her to any Disney princess, I would say she's like the most similar to Jasmine, only with a lot more street smarts and much less sheltered.
Yes, I agree.
I just want to say that, speaking of character, I think one of the things that's actually pretty unbelievable for me, because of the people who worked on this film, like technically I can understand how this happened, but for it being the first effort for Fox and both of their two films that they made, their voice talent is like sort of stacked. Like when you look at who voiced all of their characters, even at this point for Disney, they weren't stacking with well-known celebrities. They used voice actors and a lot of Broadway people. They weren't, Fox like came in with the full bill. I honestly can't think of one character that wasn't voiced by like a pretty big celebrity. In both of their movies, not just Anastasia, both Anastasia and Titan AE, they had like a stacked cast for their voice talent.
And it was all people who were like at the very height of their popularity. Like Meg Ryan, I would argue Kelsey Grammer was probably the biggest. Was Frasier still on TV at that point? I don't know. Who cares? Bernadette Peters was like the queen of Broadway at that point. Like, yeah, you're right. Super stacked.
Angela, like the queen.
Right. Yes. Angela Lansbury. Oh my gosh. I forgot.
Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah.
Like they had kind of, they had like Disney had movies coming out. There were always some people that were like, yes, that's James Earl Jones. Yes, that's, and Disney would do that. Right. But at the same time, it just like they came with the talent for their voice actors. And I think that it also showed, because I don't think this is the most beautifully animated movie that I've ever seen. Like the quality of the voice acting, I think makes up, like the characters have chemistry, even if they weren't animated to have tons of chemistry. Or there were times where like the computer generated stuff really overtook the rest of the animation and you weren't paying attention to the character work as much. The voice acting carried the story and it carried those characters through those kind of rough moments that the animation had within it, which I think speaks a lot to, similar to the music, that speaks a lot to why I think it still holds as a movie. It's like beautifully acted by the voice actors.
I would agree. Absolutely. A phenomenal cast. And speaking of voices, let's go back to the music for a little bit. And I have to ask, what is your favorite song of this amazing, amazing soundtrack?
In the dark of the night, evil will find.
Do I even have to ask? Okay, why is it so great, guys?
First, like, it's just a bop. I will literally just listen to that song like when I need a pick me up. It is so beautifully orchestrated. The rock guitar, I'm like, is there like a rock power ballad in the middle of especially because we've just come from all this like sweeping, like we've got Rumor in St. Petersburg and we've got Journey to the Past and like these big, beautiful Broadway orchestrations. And then suddenly it's like electric guitar and this like raspy voice and these like satanic bugs, like, in the dark of the night. Like it just is, it's so good. And it is so perfectly placed for that character. And again, lightens it up a little bit because they very easily could have gone, I think that like what it reminds me of the most is Be Prepared in The Lion King, but Be Prepared is a lot darker and like darkly orchestrated, and it fits into the orchestration of Lion King. Whereas like this one is just, I don't even like, it's just on its own. It's a phenomenal song. It's animated beautifully. It's just, and I love this entire score. I hate to even pick what my favorite song is, because when I watch it, I'm like, this one's my favorite. This one's my favorite. This one's my favorite. But the one that I will just turn on the radio randomly, I'll be like, it's time for In the Dark of the Night. Here we go. It's such a good song.
Absolutely. That's great. What do you think, Kate?
That one is definitely, I would say that is one of my favorite songs. I would probably put that tied with Journey to the Past, just because that one is really kind of a sentimental favorite for me. I've gotten to perform it a few times for like different cabarets or benefits, and it's something that
or best friends' birthday parties.
Or best friends' birthday parties. And it's kind of a sentimental favorite of mine. So I would put those two tied for my favorite.
I love Journey to the Past, and it's just classic. Is a great introduction to Anastasia, and honestly, just like the end of it feels so epic and powerful, because she's just like, boom, there she is. St. Petersburg is all laid out in front of her, and it's just like epicness. So I definitely agree.
It's such a perfect I Want song. Just how it starts out so softly and then builds and builds into this like beautiful, just like kind of release of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so my favorite song is Once Upon a December. It's just not even a contest for me. Like, it is beautiful. It just as a song, like listening to it, just like it gives me shivers. But then visually, like I just can't match the visual of like the paintings coming to life and coming all around her. It feels incredible, just so magical. She's just connected in this way, and she doesn't know how, like, and she gets to like, I don't know, it's just like, it's really, especially when I'm like can't even talk because I'm so like overwhelmed with emotion by this sequence. And it's such a short part of the film, but like it's so impactful. Like, she's back where the film begins. She's back in the ballroom. The paintings come to life. She's surrounded by her family. When her family comes out of the portrait, I want to cry. And when she like, her father comes up to her and she doesn't know it's him, like she doesn't know that she's, I can't even. And so it's just such a beautiful, powerful, epic moment, and I love this song.
That is, even though In the Dark of the Night is my favorite song, the best song in the film is Once Upon a December. The composition and the orchestration of that song is so it's, first of all, just like, it's haunting. The melody is so haunting, and the way that it just, and it's a combination of how it's animated as well, but the way that it starts with the clinky music box and then it builds up to the big full orchestration and the big choir. And I make Kate sing the soprano part for me all the time, just because she's great at it. It's the song of the movie. It's also the theme that repeats through the entire score. And it's just haunting. And it's the song that they wove the most like Russian composition sound into. There's like a little Tchaikovsky in there. I can't pronounce anything correctly, but there's just like lots of very traditional Russian elements to it. It reminds me a lot of the music from Dr. Zhivago, which is one of my like favorite films of all time. And that has, like, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful scores ever written for a film, animated or live action. It's just, if you never watched Dr. Zhivago, which everyone should, at least listen to the score because it's gorgeous. And it reminds me of that. It's just got a lot of those really traditional Russian elements, and it's just haunting and wintry and sultry and mysterious, and it's just like, it's the song of the movie. It's just a beautiful piece of music.
Absolutely. It is like absolutely the theme of the entire film. I'm pretty sure it's the first song they wrote for the movie. And it just carries everything in it. Like it carries us through the entire film is this song and this melody. And it's beautiful. And it's such a good moment. Okay, with all of that said, talking about great characters, the plot, the amazing score, we've got to talk about the animation. So, 1997, integration of 3D and 2D. Laura and Kate clearly have opinions. So
I feel like it was enlightening watching it on a modern, basically like up to date with the technology TV, because you can very clearly see the massive flaws from 1997 to now.
Yes, I will say it's incredibly obvious. It's definitely more obvious to me now than it was, when I was younger. Like I think of watching it as a kid, like I didn't notice anything at all, but like now obviously where there are CG elements. And I actually have a lot of really good things to say about the animation. And so I'd love for you guys to air out your grievances before I correct them.
I just feel like the one thing that stands out to me, the one that really stands out to me is the animation of the crown and the jewelry. It's just such a like striking difference between the two. And it's really funny to watch. You two are laughing at something and I want to know what it is.
I just have never heard Kelly throw shade like that before. It's like really intense. Kate, I agree. The funny thing is that I actually don't mind the crown, because when I was little, I thought it was so beautiful because it was so shocking.
Yeah, I mean, it's super
like, I want the shiny
sure.
crown. My only grievance with it, and I feel the same way. It's not just Anastasia. I think it's both of the movies that came out of this studio, because I actually really liked Titan AE. I had it when I was little. My dad really liked, not like as it's a good movie, but we watched it a lot in my family because we really liked science fiction. And I liked the storyline and the space element of Titan AE. Kelly, stop throwing shade at me. Okay. I'm getting to a point.
No, I'm just like, wow, we obviously need to talk about Titan AE on this podcast. Because
Titan
I have
AE.
some opinions on that film.
Oh, well,
I've never seen it.
Kate, we should watch it.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
Oh no.
What I was going to say about both of them is I feel like they had a group of computer animators and a group of 2D animators, and they both said, we're going to make what we like. And they refused to try to integrate their styles with each other. I understand that comes from building computer language is really difficult. And what they created was amazing and beautiful, and like probably pushed a lot of the art form forward, and a lot of the people who worked on that probably learned a lot and went on to other studios and did a lot of amazing work. I just feel like the computer generated elements in this film look exactly like the computer generated elements in Titan AE, and it just looks like they had a bunch of computer people who wanted to make science fiction films and like build cool space stuff using a computer. And then they were like, here's what we made, and we're out of time and money, so it's also Anastasia. And I'm like, why are there space bats in Anastasia? Like, I don't, that's my grievance with it. I think that the 2D is really beautiful. I think there was nothing really new. I'd seen it a lot before. I just think that there was like a huge failure to make the two parts of their animation studio work together.
This was the first film of Fox Animation Studios. So who knows on that point, but I will say, at least in comparing this film to other films of the time, specifically Disney, we're looking at Hercules, Mulan. And we just talked about Mulan on the podcast this past fall. So that's like fresh in the brain. And when I think about Mulan's 3D usage, they definitely I will admit, integrated it better into the 2D environments. However, I would say like have a lot of like appreciation for the team at Anastasia, and at the time it was praised for its animation because they used it so much and in such versatile ways. Like you think about Mulan and it's used in these big climactic epic moments, but they really they honestly, when I think about it, they don't utilize it as much as Anastasia does. It is like cinematic after cinematic moment with using that CG. And obviously they had, you know, they used the CG for all of these like practical reasons, right? The trains, the horse-drawn carriages, the cars, the boats, the bicycles, like all these things that are just easier to animate that way. But then you get things like they animated in the, you know, Paris song, and they animate the table that Dimitri's sitting at so that, you know, they can turn the camera all the way around him as Anastasia is being taken off to the dance floor. Like just those sort of like camera movements that they wouldn't have been able to do with just 2D animation. And I really, really, really applaud the team for utilizing 3D well. And it's used a lot in this film, and it's always for a reason. And I feel like it's just like shot after shot after shot of these epic, beautiful like camera shots and this epic cinematic moments. And so I was like, man, that is amazing. They're utilizing the 3D and they're utilizing it well.
I just want to say I agree with you as someone who doesn't know a lot about animation myself. I think that it's beautiful where they used it's exciting to watch. I remember it feeling different when I saw it in the theater. One of the reasons that my dad really liked Titan AE was he loved the computer animation. My dad is the electrical engineer and writes a lot of computer code and just like could not get over, like, that's why he didn't even like the movie for the story. He was like, look at this cool 3D animation space movie.
That's
right.
Awesome.
Like, wow. And so for me, it wasn't that it was poorly done. I just think that it's very clear that this was an early attempt at such a large scale integration of the two mediums. And I don't know that it ended just like, I don't know, you know how Disney spends forever on their characters and storyboarding and building characters and clothing them and like weaving the world together. I just feel like it just like the integration of the two feels very rushed, that it was like, we do all of this very cool, beautiful, practical cinematic stuff. And then these other people built these really cartoony characters. And now we're going to try to take these cartoony people and put them into this really realistic stuff. And no one really wants to compromise and make it look, you know, the computer people were like, look how realistic this looks. And the 2D people are like, look at our funny characters. And then they're like, live together, people, you know?
Yeah. And again, comparing it to Mulan, that's where I think the difference lies, is that I feel like the Mulan CG is integrated better with the characters than Anastasia did. But like, and I'd have to rewatch Mulan again and compare them more. But in my where I'm currently at, having just watched Anastasia, I feel like Anastasia just did more of it. Like they just like, I can't imagine how much work it was at the time, how much like CG they were putting out there in this film. It's crazy.
Well, and one other thing that I kind of noticed as watching through, and like, granted, I really don't know anything about animation other than just enjoying watching it, but I feel like, at least compared to other films, mainly Disney, that I have seen and watched many times, just kind of comparing animation styles. And I don't know if this is due to the marriage of the 2D and the 3D. I just felt like there was a lot of moments in the film where the animation looked a little, particularly when characters are like moving really quickly, it felt like people's like profiles would disappear, or like if they turned really fast, like parts of their face just didn't mesh up the way that other films kind of around that same time had kind of done a little better. And like I said, I don't know if that's just due to the combination of the two mediums of the 3D animation and the 2D. But that's just kind of one of my biggest things watching Anastasia. Sometimes it's like, oh, that looks a little wonky, or that looks a little funny, at least compared to some other animation.
It just makes me sad that their studio folded after 2 films, because I feel like they had obviously very brilliant animators, and they were able to attract really high level talent, both technically and like cast wise. And it just kind of makes me sad of like what else they could have created if they hadn't folded.
Yeah. Well, and it'd be interesting to, like, just think about what kind of innovations that they might have been able to make, like compared to Disney, or then DreamWorks kind of launching with Shrek a couple years later, just kind of if they had continued to be competitive within the market.
I mean, Titan AE kind of ruined it for them, didn't it?
No one can say that there weren't cool animated elements in Titan AE.
I guess we'll just have to talk about it so you can point them all out to me. Okay, I'll stop throwing shade at Titan AE.
Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not someone else's favorite movie.
It's not my favorite movie.
Yeah. I'm not saying that it's your favorite movie. I'm just saying other people like it.
Yeah, there are people out there that love it, and I'm not dissing that at all, because that's what Fanimated is about. It's about like sharing the stories you really like. And that's the only reason I would talk about on the podcast, is that now that I know Laura likes it, so then she can defend it.
I mean, I got Kelly to watch the live action Last Airbender.
Avatar, yeah. If we can talk about the Last Airbender film on this podcast, we can talk about anything.
Right.
Oh, man. But yes, Fox Animation Studios only produced Anastasia and Titan AE. That was it. And that was it for them. Interestingly, when they had started Fox Animation Studios, they had Don Bluth and Gary Goldman directing, and they were like, okay, we need something to start off this studio. Like, what do you guys want to do? And they were actually looking at, some other IPs that the studio owned, to just kind of like, let's just revamp something for an animated media. And they had considered My Fair Lady and The King and I as possible adaptations.
Didn't a studio do an animated King and I?
There is an animated King and I forget which studio did that. Let me look it up.
That movie is like a fever dream from my past, because I definitely saw it in the theaters, and I definitely like can remember elements of it, and then think to myself, did that actually happen? Did that exist? Or was that just something I made up in my head?
Thank God they picked Anastasia. That's all I can say. Good God.
My Fair Lady would be a boring animated movie.
And they didn't, because they were like, well, we can't beat Audrey Hepburn, so.
Also, like, for kids? Like,
right.
What?
So boring.
Okay, yes, The King and I, 1999 American animated musical film, production company Morgan Creek Entertainment, distributed by Warner Brothers. So there is an animated King and I vaguely remember watching it at some point.
I just remember that there's like a monkey and an unnecessary villain.
Yes, both
in
of
the
those
film,
things.
Which like that does not exist in the stage. It's all very confusing. I really wish that I could like go back and rewatch it and just be super confused, just to knowing a little more about the actual. Were they real people? We're not talking about The King and I. This is about Anastasia.
I don't know about The King and I, but I do know that Anastasia is extremely loosely based off of real historical fact. Obviously, Anastasia, we now know as of like 2009 or something, that Anastasia did perish with the rest of her family in 1918. I mean, her grandmother didn't even ever have a reward out for if she was alive. There were definitely people who claimed to be Anastasia, a lot of imposters, Anna Anderson being the most popular, most infamous, I should say. but like the Grand Duchess never met any of them. She had no interest in any of that. I mean, I can only imagine the poor woman just wanted to live the rest of her lonely life in peace. Um, but yeah, I find all of the information like of this history really fascinating. Like just the Russian Revolution. There's so much that goes into it, and one of the biggest critiques of the film at the time that it was released was that it wasn't historically accurate, which I understand to those who really, really love this history and like are, or that's a part of their history, or, there's just so much that goes into, having to really just like tear it all away to make for a family friendly film. And I think, it's a fine line. Like, I really think that this film does a good job with its historical inaccuracies in the way that there's magic involved, and B, like, it still feels like fantasy, but in a historical setting, because Anastasia isn't like this. This is just a like what if, kind of scenario. So it's almost like this Anastasia, this Anya is really is a completely made up character, so it doesn't feel like it's I guess I just, even though I really find the true history very fascinating, I'm not like turned off by the fact that they have so much historical inaccuracy, because this story isn't about that. It's about, Anastasia finding her family. And obviously there's a lot more with the Russian Revolution that they gloss over. And, Rasputin himself, I think, is one of the biggest, changes from, historical fact, just that, like, there's a lot of, he might not have been the best person ever, but he was really close to the Romanovs, and he actually died before the Russian Revolution. And there's like all this other stuff about him. So I guess what's interesting is looking at this film and how they had to choose, what direction to go in from a historical standpoint. And, at one point they had a script that was much darker and more historically accurate. And they were like, listen, like interesting for me to say this when in actuality, this film is very dark. But it, could have gone in a completely different direction. I think definitely making, adding the magic of Rasputin's magic, like, definitely adds to making it feel like it's something different completely, it like a fantasy within realism. So yeah, so that's definitely a critique for people, but I guess all this to say, as I'm thinking about it, like, this film isn't like The Prince of Egypt, for example. Like, The Prince of Egypt is probably the best example of an animated, historically accurate film. And Anastasia is a fairy tale. Ultimately, it's just a fairy tale that has roots in reality.
Good research, Kelly.
It is an interesting topic, thinking about like adapting historical content in any form, like, especially for this purpose, for a family-friendly film, and how to do that. And now I'm thinking even more about Prince of Egypt and how they're able to, they were able to add like the darker elements and the, atrocities that, these people live through while still making a family-friendly musical.
I actually think a better comparison, in that I think Anastasia did a better job from a like, this is appropriate for children situation, is to Hunchback of Notre Dame. Because it's a more modern historical event with characters and groups of people that we still recognize today. And it had sort of adult content, right? The fall of Imperial Russia and the rise of communism and the murder of a family. And all of that kind of stuff. And obviously Hunchback of Notre Dame deals with a lot of it's entirely adult content. And I actually think because Anastasia is a story similar to what you said, Kelly, that Anastasia is the story in and of itself of Anastasia is already kind of a fairy tale. Like it was this invented rumor that had a lot of weird magic, unbelievable elements to it anyway. And so they started with the actual historical event, right? The rise of the taking down of the Romanov family. And then they just went from there. And that's actually the true story of Anastasia. So I think if they were going to use, like, this is a good example of something based in history that almost kind of like Mulan too. It's like a fairy tale based in history, but because it's stuff that we recognize, I think that it was a really, really good choice, and it was a really good adaptation.
Yeah, because this is a story that does have real historical characters in it, too. And technically this film is based off of, like I had mentioned, they were looking for IPs that Fox already had, and they had made a film called Anastasia in 1956, a live action Anastasia. So it's
actually, is that the one with Ingrid Bergman, right?
I did not look into that.
I think. Anyways, I think that was what that was. Okay.
So, but yeah, so they that it was based off of that film, and that film was based off of a play. So, even though this, was set historically, just like Hunchback, just like Mulan, they're based off of other stories and other, in Mulan's case, fables, and Hunchback's case, novels. So it always leads back to something. It's nothing new is under the sun. So that's it. That's Anastasia. That's all we have for right now. It's just a great film to like end with. Like, just for me, I think this is like probably one of my favorite 90s films.
Absolutely. I love it.
It's a beautiful little film. There's a reason that when it won the poll, Kate and I were like, can you please talk about this one with us? Like, I know we probably have other people who want to talk about it, but we get this one.
Well, she is an honorary Disney princess now, so I have to talk about it with the Disney Princess Gals.
That's us!
So thank you guys so much for chatting with me about Anastasia. And again, listeners, be sure to check out patreon.com/Fanimated if you'd like to vote for any other upcoming episode topics. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Fanimated Podcast. You can email us at fanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. The music that you're hearing now is provided by Purple Planet Music. And we are on YouTube. We are going to be releasing episodes on YouTube same day as podcasts everywhere else, starting next week. So that's exciting. Be sure to be a subscriber there too if you want to hang out with some live streams that I've been doing occasionally. So don't miss it. Next week, we're talking about Jujutsu Kaisen, so completely turning 180 degrees towards some anime action adventure, if you're ready for that. So, again, Kate and Laura, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. It's always a blast having you guys on. So we'll talk to you guys next week, and in the meantime, stay tuned.
And stay animated. Fanimated.
Good job, Kate. Stay animated. I suddenly realized, I think this is actually when my obsession with tiny dogs started, because I had a plush puka that I took everywhere with me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And now you have a real Fergus to carry around.
I know.